I think it was just an opportunity to really just work with them. We have masterclasses which have been amazing, and then that was all about just equipping them to move from where they are now, somewhere where they can really contribute to the art ecosystem.
Ik kom uit België en de Art Fair is heel leuk.
I'm just blown away.
Je suis ravie de visiter cette exposition. C'est toujours un plaisir de découvrir un pays sous la forme de l'art, donc on est très chanceux de pouvoir y participer.
It's lovely to learn the African Nigerian culture through this art.
Hi, my name is Amoboye Odu. I'm the head of SMEs, Partnerships and Collaborations at Ecobank Nigeria. Nigeria is easily the most populous country in Africa with more than 200 million people. The interesting fact about this is that the median age of our population is at 80, which means we have a young and growing population. But let me bring it back to how that impacts Nigeria as an economy. Now, these indigenes are primarily SMEs in different spaces, in fashion, in creative, in tech, in services, agriculture, and many more. All of these SMEs collectively contribute 45% of GDP in Nigeria. But interestingly, as much as oil and gas contributes in terms of export revenue, 90%, it only contributes 10 to 12% of GDP. The rest of it comes primarily from SMEs, from the services sector, from manufacturing allied, and from agriculture. In total, SMEs contribute about 45% of GDP in Nigeria today. There are myriads of SMEs in Nigeria. We have the creative space, we have fashion, we have tech, we have agriculture, we have services, and many more. Given the values SMEs present in our country and continent, Ecobank Nigeria is positioned to be the leading partner bank to SMEs in Nigeria. we have developed various strategies, various products and services to provide solutions to these SMEs and elevate their pain points and ensure that their businesses become scalable. We're looking to grow local businesses to global standards. In trying to impact as many SMEs as possible, with the over 40 million SMEs in Nigeria, we've come to realize the most effective way of doing this is to create a webinar. And we've created this My SME Growth Series, which is a webinar that addresses everything from positioning, branding, enhancing business skills, scalability, dealing with exports, hedging your risk, insurance, cash flow empowerment by using solar power to ensure that our SMEs in Nigeria are able to scale and compete more effectively at the global level. To date, with the webinars we've run, we've been able to impact more than 50,000 people and counting. So our SME desk is set up and equipped to provide the right kind of advice to our SMEs, point them in the right direction, and then help them realign their business so that it becomes scalable and are able to compete globally. So one of the other things we do is allow brands become more visible by giving them a platform where they can showcase their offerings to the larger public. So as a bank, we've done +234 to spotlight our young creatives and give them a global audience to play with. We've done Adire, Symphony of Colors, showing how our creative industry can put together ready-to-wear. Incidentally, if you go to some high streets in London today, you'll find Adire outfits in certain stores, which makes us very proud. We've more recently done Oja Oge, our pop-up fashion event, which just shows us that, look, Nigerian creatives, Nigerian fashion industry has a lot of depth and breadth, and we're looking to push that forward. Our SME growth story, our SME development, SME success story is the success of Ecobank, especially Ecobank Nigeria.
Adire la fi ń pè ní Adire. Adire, a cultural tapestry worn across Nigeria. From the intricate designs of Alabere to the distinctive patterns of Oniko and Eleko, Adire captures the majestic rose of white and blue, now blossoming into vibrant colors of the rainbow. In Abeokuta and Osogbo, the heartlands of Adire, the passion is loud and proud. In the bustling streets of Lagos, and even in Kano, the ancient dye plates tell a story of tradition and innovation, showcasing the enduring legacy of this masterpiece. Adire is more than fabric. It is the past and the present moment, paying homage to the hands that wove the first threads, mixed the first pots of indigo, starch, and bond the first wax. Adire is more than fabric. It's a living history, a celebration of craftsmanship that transcends borders, uniting us in its vibrant embrace. Adire, more than fabric.
At the very beginning, we said Adire is more than fabric. The Adire Lagos experience is more than an event. It's a symphony of colors. It's old friends meeting randomly. It's new friends being made. It's SMEs finding customers. It's a fashion event turned festival. The Adire Lagos experience has brought smiles to the faces of both vendors and customers. with vendors from around Africa to customers from different parts of the world. The rhythm of each day plays out beautifully, paying homage to the hands that wove the first threads, makes the first pot of indigo, starch, and burned the first wax. The beauty of the colors, the uniqueness of the patterns. Adire is truly more than fabric. It's been an amazing 4 days of promoting Adire, SMEs, our culture, and our heritage. 4 days of our vision brought into reality. It's Adire Lagos, brought to you by Ecobank Nigeria. Thank you all for coming, and see you next year.
Well, my name is Ade Laoye. I'm the founding partner of ICAD Architects. We've just completed one of our, I'd say, memorable projects, the National Theatre refurbishment and renovation. It's been quite good because it shows you what Nigerians can do. You know, most of our buildings that are dilapidated are normally demolished or not properly restored, but it shows you that a Nigerian team has been able to restore a national icon. So it shows you the importance of architecture. And I think architecture sometimes, you don't understand that architecture is beyond the buildings. Architecture is about the spaces around buildings as well, just not the building. And we call that urban architecture. And it affects our daily life. We're not aware of that. With bad planning, bad architectural planning, you'll have problems in your society. Pharaohs had their architects. Caesar had an architect. That's why everybody says, see Rome and die, see Paris and die. Even New York, even London. Architecture is vital to any city. Yeah, and as you know, architecture is about designing, and architecture is also about building. Without the architectural design, there's no building. You know, which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? So once you design, and you design well, and you design for you design for what they call affordable housing, you design for villas, you design for cities, you design for villages. And once you've designed that, that now becomes the build. The build is linked to the design. Two of them work together. And it's important that architects, contractors, developers, specifiers, and suppliers all work together in harmony to create a wonderful city that will work for everybody.
Hi everyone, my name is Yinka Ogundaro, one of the partners in Adenium of Architects and Engineers. When you look at the Nigerian discourse in terms of what architecture has done and contributed to Nigeria, you will find out in the very beginning that architecture has helped us to even establish our identities. Urbanization happened, and then a lot of people moved into the cities, and you will find that we started growing our cities. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. We needed bigger buildings to take care of the massive urbanization that was happening. Architecture had a role to play in this. And even as our society developed, we needed more specialized buildings, schools, hospitals, cinemas, theaters, and all these kind of things that kind of showed that we were developing as a nation. A lot of the materials we use are imported. Now we have to come up with locally sourced materials that can be used at an industrial scale, such that we will be less dependent on importation. So architecture definitely has a role to play in our discourse and our national discourse as we go into the future. But one very important thing, even though we're part of a global village, architecture must help us to always remember who we are and give us that identity as Nigerians.
My name is Adeyemo Shokumbi. I'm a co-creative director at Patrick Waheed Design Consultancy. I'm an architect working in Nigeria, and we are now at a crossroad, in my opinion, that our architecture needs to start reflecting the environment that it's in, the context, the heritage, the history, all the things that would give Nigerian architecture the credibility that it deserves. The journey so far is that we're now at a crossroads where I believe that it is important to start imbibing some of the things that I mentioned earlier. Architecture is now at a crossroads. Architecture is at a place where every architect has a responsibility to make a difference. A lot has changed since I moved back to Nigeria. I've seen the direction that we're going in, and I'm quite happy. But as we all know, there's still a long way to go. And Ecobank, I think, have taken it upon themselves to see how they can play their part in helping architects or people in the built industry, built environment rather, to be on this path where Nigeria can begin to sort of like showcase our heritage, our traditions, our culture, the context in the architecture that we're doing here.
Building Nigeria together.
Building Nigeria together.
Building Nigeria together.
It's beautiful, and I see it's adding value to the creative industry. I mean, already I'm thinking of opportunities that can come out from here, things that can happen here, and I want to say it's a fantastic initiative.
You know, for the participants, what I want to say to them that the government is now here to give them the support. They have the platform for the first time ever whereby they can really have an enabling environment that they can thrive.
It's a celebration of Africa, African businesses, its fashion, its culture, and most importantly, its people.
It means we can showcase more emerging artists. We'll have more areas. We now include sculpture, photography, and digital art. So I think it was just an opportunity to really just work with them. We have master classes, which have been amazing. And then that was all about just equipping them to move from where they are now, somewhere where they can really contribute to the art ecosystem.
Ik kom uit België en de art fair is heel leuk.
I'm just blown away.
Je suis ravie de visiter cette exposition. C'est toujours un plaisir de découvrir un pays sous la forme de l'art. Donc on est très chanceux de pouvoir y participer.
It's lovely to learn the African-Nigerian culture through this art.
Hi, my name is Amaboye Odu. I'm the head of SMEs, partnerships and collaborations at Ecobank Nigeria. Nigeria is easily the most populous country in Africa with more than 200 million people. The interesting fact about this is that the median age of our population is at 18, which means we have a young and growing population. But let me bring it back to how that impacts Nigeria as an economy. Now, these indigenes are primarily SMEs in different spaces, in fashion, in creative, in tech, in services, agriculture, and many more. All of these SMEs collectively contribute 45% of GDP in Nigeria. But interestingly, as much as oil and gas contributes in terms of export revenue, 90%, it only contributes 10 to 12% of GDP. The rest of it comes primarily from SMEs, from the services sector, from manufacturing allied, and from agriculture. In total, SMEs contribute about 45% of GDP in Nigeria today. There are myriads of SMEs in Nigeria. We have the creative space, we have fashion, we have tech, we have agriculture, we have services, and many more. Given the values SMEs present in our country and continent, Ecobank Nigeria is positioned to be the leading partner bank to SMEs in Nigeria. We have developed various strategies, various products and services to provide solutions to these SMEs and elevate their pain points and ensure that their businesses become scalable. We're looking to grow local businesses to global standards. In trying to impact as many SMEs as possible with the over 40 million SMEs in Nigeria, we've come to realize the most effective way of doing this is to create a webinar. And we've created this My SME Growth Series, which is a webinar that addresses everything from positioning, branding, enhancing business skills, scalability, dealing with exports, hedging your risk, insurance, cash flow empowerment by using solar power to ensure that our SMEs in Nigeria are able to scale and compete more effectively at the global level. To date, with the webinars we've run, we've able to impact more than 50,000 people and counting. So our SME desk is set up and equipped to provide the right kind of advice to our SMEs, point them in the right direction, and then help them realign their business so that it becomes scalable and are able to compete globally. So one of the other things we do is allow brands become more visible by giving them a platform where they can showcase their offerings to the larger public. So as a bank, we've done +234 to spotlight our young creatives and give them a global audience to play with. We've done Ajebe, Symphony of Colors, showing how our creative industry can put together ready-to-wear. Incidentally, if you go to some high streets in London today, you'll find Nigeria outfits in certain stores, which makes us very proud. We've more recently done Ojaoge, our pop-up fashion event, which just shows us that, look, Nigerian creatives, Nigerian fashion industry has a lot of depth and breadth, and we're looking to push that forward. Our SME growth story, our SME development, SME success story is the success of Ecobank, especially Ecobank Nigeria. Hi, my name is Amaboye Odu. I'm the head of SMEs, partnerships and collaborations.
Bolaji Balogun. He's a CEO of Chapel Hill Denham, and he's also CIO of Nigerian Infrastructure Debt Fund. Bolaji has over 35 years of experience in the investment banking and telecom space. And also his firm, Chapel Hill, is one of the leading investment banks in the country. Embarked in doing alternative asset management and focused in areas that are creative to Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Bolaji has 10 years experience with FCMB prior to and up to where he worked in 2001, and he left to co-found Econet Wireless Nigeria. For those above 30 years, I believe will know what Econet is. Econet evolved into becoming Airtel, and part of the deal financing structures Bolaji has been involved in is the $1.67 billion sale to Celtel in 2005, which remains the largest transaction for private investment. Bolaji founded Chapel Hill in 2005, and currently he is the chairman of Unilever Nigeria PLC and Endeavor Nigeria. He's also a board member of United Nations Global Compact and is a co-founder of Private Sector Advisory Group on the SDGs. I mean, the profile is just so long. I wish I had it on my resume. Okay, he was immediate past chairman of Lafarge Africa, and is also a member of Johannesburg Stock Exchange Africa. Bolaji holds a degree from the London School of Economics in economics. Thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming Bolaji Lawal to Bolaji Balogun, Dr. Bolaji Balogun to. Sorry, boy, we should have chairs here. Or are we going to be standing?
Where do you want me to?
No, you
Thank
should
you.
have this.
Ecobank community, members of the build and design industry, good morning. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share a few words. What I'd really like to do, if it's okay, is to start first and foremost by thanking Ecobank for doing this. As I walked around this morning, one must not underestimate the extent of thought, but also the leadership around the selection of all of the representatives of the build industry who are here. And I think often banks don't spend a lot of time investing in customers. This is a big investment in customers, and I want to commend the Ecobank team. I also want to mention a particular young lady, Omoboye Odu. And the reason why I should is that Boye can't ask me to do anything and I say no. This was a day where I'm dealing with some tight deadlines and running to the airport from here. But if I said no to Boye, I would have been in trouble. And the reason why is that when I started my firm nearly 20 years ago, and when there were only a handful of us, Boye took tremendous risk on me. She joined when there were 3 or 4 of us, and she's very much a part of the Chapel Hill Denham story and that family. So thank you, Boye, for what you do. I'm going to talk today about sustainable financing, and when you all hear this topic, you wonder what is it about and why does it matter to me. I'll try to talk for no more than about 7 to 10 minutes. What I'd really like to do is just open the floor for you to ask questions. Hopefully I can share a bit of experience as well that may or may not be relevant. And while in introducing me, they talked about what I've done in finance, what I've done in telecoms. Perhaps some of what's more relevant today is my experience from the build industry. I spent 16 and a half years on the board of what you now know as Lafarge Africa PLC. Some of that is relevant to today and really sort of formed my own thinking about the build industry and why sustainable finance is really, really important. What is sustainable finance? And to simplify it, sustainable finance is really just making financial decisions that ultimately benefit the environment, benefit the communities in which we live in, and essentially ensure that we will all have a sustainable future. If you think about the build industry today, everything that you do emits a significant amount of carbon. And if you think about the deficits that we have in our country today, whether it's the deficits in housing, dependent on who you ask, they say it's somewhere between 16 and 18 million homes. I don't know how they get to that answer, but it could be, whether it's less or more, it's a big deficit. Whether it's the deficits we have in A-grade type buildings, whether it's for offices, for retail, whether it's the deficits we have in student housing, where only about 10% of the students that go to institutions of higher learning in our country can be guaranteed that they'll get a room on campus. And when they get that room on campus, often it's not uncommon that rooms that have been built for 4 persons end up being, occupied by 12 or more. Whether it's the deficits around buildings for specialized education or buildings for healthcare, everywhere that you think of, there are very significant deficits in this country. But those deficits are also going to increase further, because the one thing that will happen to this country is that because we haven't started doing anything about population growth, we will become, in your lifetime and my lifetime by God's grace, 450 to 500 million people. The population still continues to grow at 3% plus per annum. And I don't know which Nigerian president is going to turn up and propose a one-child per family policy. They definitely will not win the next election. And I don't even think anyone will listen to them. So the reality of it is that this country will become the 3rd most populous nation on earth sometime within the next 25 to 30 years. And when that happens, it will also be a population in their prime. Because the population today, the average age of the population, is just under 19 years at about 18 years and 9 months. So that population needs to be housed. That population needs to be serviced. But it's more than that. There are some other types of buildings that you and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that are going to be even more important to our build industry. And I think with such a big population, if you imagine that every Nigerian would probably, in 10 years' time, have a digital footprint with their bank, have a digital footprint with the government, right? It means that we're going to consume a lot of technology, and technology means we're also going to become very, very dependent on this new technology, artificial intelligence. And what that means is that we will need massive data center capacity in this country. And data centers, while they mean buildings and specialized buildings, also mean power. So how are we going to make this transition, towards a net zero future? And this is important for the world. If we build and design our buildings in exactly the way that the rest of the world has done over the last 100 years, we're going to create even more carbon emissions for the world because of the population explosion that will happen here. So it starts off with the design industry, but it also starts off with the materials that we use. And one of the reasons why sustainable finance is going to be really, really important is that there is significant capital in the world that is focused on how it can ensure that you are thinking about ESG in everything that you do. Banking markets for sustainable finance are large, but the capital markets for sustainable finance in this country and internationally are even equally large. And the opportunity there goes from everything from non-interest financing, or what we call sukuk financing, yeah? And sukuk financing, very, very appropriate for construction type projects, for real estate risk, yeah? You don't have to be Muslim to partake in sukuk financing. It is an excellent methodology of financing for real estate, for road construction type projects, When you ride on that nice road that takes you Ahmadu Bello Way to the end, it's been financed using a federal government sukuk. I issued the first sukuk in this country for a state, the Osun state government, because at that time the federal was not ready to start doing sukuk financing. That was used to finance classrooms for education, in the state. So that's a significant source of financing. The other source of financing, particularly where you're designing buildings that have any kind of green certification or EDGE certification, is green finance. And again, the opportunity set here is quite strong. We led the first issuance of a green bond for the government of Nigeria. The government of Nigeria has issued a second green bond, and the first corporate to issue a green bond in Nigeria was another bank. I'm in the premises of a bank, so I won't mention their name. Yeah, and we have also seen a couple of states beginning to look at issuing green finance. And these markets are very large and very, very substantial across the world. Other elements of green financing, of sustainable financing, also include blue financing, and I'll talk about that. So the seawall that is being built at Eco-Atlantic, right, and across, the 10 square kilometers of what will be Eco-Atlantic, is a project, for example, that would qualify, if the developers of that project thought about it for blue financing. And again, I see many, many women in the room and very, very excited that there are increasingly more and more women around the build industry. One of the other fantastic opportunities you have in sustainable financing is what you call orange financing and gender financing, And orange bonds literally can be used for businesses that are, or orange financing that are predominantly owned by women, that significantly employ women in their employment, or have significant components of women in their leadership. So when you hear this big term, sustainable financing, it sounds like it's, some kind of financial abracadabra. But what it is simply, and the way I like to define it, is financing for good, financing for development, or financing for the future. And I think that if we are going to develop this country and this region need to be built very, very substantially, we need to do it in a low carbon, resilient way so that we're thinking about reducing carbon footprints all of the time. If you were designing a building before, you would normally have thought, I designed the building, I put a 50 kVA generator inside the building, and you solve the power needs. If you have lived in Nigeria in the last 2 years, you will know that diesel is a curse. Whether it's the price of diesel changing regularly and you can't predict what price you're going to pay for diesel, or worse than that, it is people around, the diesel stealing the diesel. You almost wonder whether they're drinking the diesel. If you live at home and you ever happen to have cameras and you ever happen to pay attention to those cameras, I can almost certainly bet you that at least 1 in 3 of you have had incidents where either your security man or your driver was drinking your diesel. And this is a natural occurrence. And we don't even want to be using diesel. So if you're building or designing anything now, you'll be thinking about what are the low carbon ways in which we can be much more power efficient. You'll be thinking about wind. you'll be thinking, if it's a big development, right, you'll be thinking about waste to energy. Yeah? If it happens to sit anywhere where there could be a high wind table, in other words, whether somewhere along the coast of Lagos or Badagry or Bayelsa, all those places where the wind table is quite high, in future we will develop wind power. So we will all start thinking more and more about energy sources, energy efficiency around everything that we do in the design industry. If you're in this industry, you should be very excited about the future. And the near term might look a little bleak. But what I will say to you in rounding up is that every single time that you develop something and you're focused on the sustainability of that development, what you're doing is you're guaranteeing three things. You're guaranteeing first and foremost that the returns from the development will be strong. You're guaranteeing that your OPEX running that development will be lower. And finally, you're guaranteeing that that development will have high resale value. So today, if a multinational is looking to rent some space, they will be focused on the environmental, features of that property. They will be focused on the carbon footprint. They will be focused on whether the building has LEED or some kind of EDGE certification. Yeah? And the people that are focused on those sorts of things typically will pay a premium to enter that kind of asset. So if you're at that segment of the market, great opportunity. But even if you're at the low end of the market, purely from thinking about your OPEX and the cost of running and maintaining what you've built, it's really important that we're all thinking this way. If you're in this sector over the next 30 years, I truly believe that demography is destiny, and notwithstanding the current problems or difficulties you might see in this country, I truly believe that Nigeria is a big engine. What do I mean by that? It's one of these things that even if you only drive it a little well, it will grow and move quite significantly. We've been quite unfortunate with generations of leadership that this big engine hasn't been driven exceptionally well. But what is apparent is that with some good driving, it's like if you've ever driven a fast car. If you get on the road, if you just take your foot off the gas pedal, yeah, it moves on its own, yeah? And that's what a big engine does. It propels it. This country will be one of the biggest engines in the world in your lifetime, and that's what creates the opportunity. And there is still so many deficits in the building industry that need to be dealt, and that creates opportunity for you, whether you're in any part of that value chain, and you should all be excited about the future. Very happy to take a few comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Short and very insightful session. He's pressed for time, so if you have any questions, you can just drop on a note, or you can just indicate by raising your hands. But you mentioned a few things I took note of. Population explosion. I'm part of that course. Yes. I have so many kids by the side. And also, you talked about orange finance, blue finance.
There's a friend of mine laughing here. You don't know why he's laughing. He's laughing because I have 5 kids.
Wow. So, okay. I have 4. Okay, just for the records. So,
you need one more.
No, I ain't going there. I'll relocate to my village if I do that.
School fees are a good discipline.
Yes.
So don't be like me.
So I would like our guests, our people here, fine people here, to take 1 or 2 things back I know liquidity has been squeezed from different monetary policies, CRR, and we have players in the real sector space that are really bleeding. Would like you to maybe give us a bit more of how they can benefit from this ESG move through carbon credits. I heard in the European Western space, most of the carbon credits are rated very high, unlike us, because we have the lungs of the earth, I hear, is Amazon forest and the Congo. At some point, the government of Congo did some project, and they, said they were saving so much carbon emission, and they were priced at below $2 per, unlike $50 in the West. So how can we, as real sector people here, take advantage, get to the right proper advisory so that they can tap into cheaper funds? Thank you.
So let me throw that into two questions. Let me first talk about the environment, where rates are, and why it sounds like it's a difficult time to be doing business. Actually, every time we enter one of these seasons, you must see it as a season of opportunity. I want to expand on why I say so. 90% of the people you compete with, when we enter these seasons, they panic, and they stop doing what they're doing because they think rates are too high, they're focused on survival. Big mistake. Every time you enter a difficult season, just keep moving, because every step that you take forward is a step of progress, but when you come out at the other end, you will be astonished at the value that you have built. And the reason why is that most other people panic and they do nothing. And actually in these opportunity seasons, so I'll give you an example. During COVID, people thought I was crazy when I kept telling, clients of ours that it's actually a time to be investing. Because what you will do is you will come out of it. And when you come out at the other end, because other people have not done anything, you will be able to price your product however you wish, because there will be a shortage of supply at the other end. What you must always look at, and many people don't understand this, is inflation. Every single time that you can borrow below inflation, borrow and keep moving. Because your business invariably is growing reasonably well managed at inflation or more. And what do I mean by that? Everybody reprices very quickly here. So we're a very efficient market responding to inflation. Even women in the market who sell gari, right, which didn't travel further than my village in Ijebu-Ode to get to Lagos. When you talk to them about why gari is so expensive, they'll reference US dollars. And you wonder, what currency they paid for the gari in Ijebu-Ode. But the fundamentals are, we have a really efficient informal market where people reprice things very, very quickly. And because of that, we all pass on inflation to the end user. So what that means is that our businesses are growing at inflation or more. So high interest rates must never deter you from continuing to do work. Let me speak to the second half of the question, because that's a completely different issue. It may or may not apply to many of you. It depends on how big the scale of your businesses are. If you do have a business that has some degree of scale and you can use financing of $2.5 billion or more annually, actually you could be candidates for utilizing capital markets. You could be candidates if you have a well-run business where you have always understood the difference between personal pockets and common pockets, which is the business and your personal pocket. You have proper financials. With a bit of luck, you've paid some small taxes, so it's not that you have 2 sets of books. And this is something I always share with entrepreneurs, yeah? The day that keeping 2 sets of books catches up with you is when you want to borrow money. Because invariably the financials don't demonstrate the real capacity of your business, and you put yourself at a disadvantaged position. But let's say you've done all of those things perfectly, and your business is growing, and you have some degree of structure around you. You can utilize CP markets, you can utilize bond markets. And the way CP and bond markets work is that for growing businesses like yourselves, you have the ability to borrow a little, a lot. So you register what they call a program. You go through a process of ratings. You need to get a credit ratings. And that credit ratings process is actually quite a good process, because if nothing else, it will make you a better business. The first time you go through a ratings process, you may not be investment grade, but that doesn't matter. If you are not investment grade, there are credit enhancements that you can get that will enable you utilize the bond markets. So I'll give you an example. If Ecobank likes you well enough, and Ecobank is willing to provide a guarantee for 5 billion naira on your business, okay? You can issue a bond, because ultimately that bond is guaranteed by Ecobank. There are also credit guarantee businesses in Nigeria, and there's a business called InfraCredit, which is again one of the businesses that we work with, who will provide guarantees for people in the build industry, on the basis of which you can use that guarantee to access the markets to raise financing. Over time, markets have always been significantly cheaper than bank markets. Bank markets are very efficient and reprice rates quickly. So when rates are going up, you find that your borrowings from your bank, you get a letter where they tell you that, you know, your new interest rate is now X. Capital markets tend to respond a little slower and can be a cheap source of financing. So that's an opportunity for you. And if there's anything around your design or your build that is environmentally sustainable, you will always finance cheaper. You will always find access to cheaper capital, both here and internationally.
So I don't know if we have any questions. Okay, thank you. Just indicate by show of hands, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ecobank, for organizing such a program like this. And Uncle, thank you so much, sir.
Bless you.
You've been an inspiration to us over the years, sir. So I'm actually a developer. And then, you know, because it's actually difficult to access funding from the commercial bank, of course, a lot of them will tell you they're not willing to. And then, of course, some private individuals are willing to venture into partnership. And then they give you a rate. At the end of the day, you realize that inflation had actually caught on. In fact, that was a project we did. We didn't make anything. We just had to just finish the project and then hand it over to people. At the end of the day, we couldn't make anything. And then the subsequent project, you now realize that it's quite difficult, terrible, crazy, you know, operating and running a business or construction business in this environment, especially in Lagos. Yes. So what can, I don't know, maybe the private equity financial houses, or maybe the commercial institution, what can they do to help the building industry? Because it's something that we really have to, I mean, a lot of developers in the house, I don't know, maybe there are a few people, they will testify to what I'm saying. It's something that some people are bleeding as I'm talking to you now. So we don't know what to do to actually, you know, when you're talking about, when you find yourself in a state like this, you still have to continue. You don't stop, that you should continue, that at the end of the day, you know, because there will be shortage at the end, at the other hand, then it seems to, I mean, it tends to benefit you. But at the same time, the fund you have might not be enough to actually carry you to the other hand. And at the end of the day, you find yourself stranded, and then a lot of people will be after you. How can we go about this, please?
I think a very good question, and I must say something to you. Keeping your word in any line of business is an amazing thing. And while you looked at that particular business that you ran as a lost opportunity, actually what you did was you built goodwill with all of the people who provided you money. Because even though you didn't make money, you returned all their money to them. If you're in the construction industry today, you're all going to have to rethink the way that you're doing projects. And the reason why is that you're dealing with currency and inflation all over the place. So whether you like it or not, front-loading your materials management becomes fundamentally important. In order to front-load materials, that means you have to have a significant amount of capital. Whether you like it or not, what everyone must get to is a scenario where you are building to offtake. But you also have to be very clever about the way that you write those contracts. If people have paid you money substantially upfront, they don't want to hear any stories. So that means that if you collect money substantially upfront, you need to deploy 100% of it into materials. Even if you're going to see some cost overruns, to a large extent, you've hedged that process. The second piece is thinking about your materials and thinking about what has an import content or FX input in it. And those are the materials always in your materials management that you need to buy first and hold them down. Invariably, in most construction that you do, steel is a big component of costs. People tend to think it's cement. It actually isn't. Steel is number one. Number two tends to be finishing. Yeah? And the problem with finishing is until you put the shell up, yeah, you often can't finish. So for you to buy tiles, all of these things down, it also means